Well, good afternoon, everyone, and certainly in Sydney, a very wet one. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. It's very exciting for us. I think we're the first, so if we have any technical issues, apologies for that up front. My name is Sam Garner. I'm the Graduate Resourcing Manager for King & Wood Mallesons, and with me is...
Hi, I'm Aiko. I'm a graduate in the projects team right now. I summer clerked in 2017 to 2018, and after that I paralegaled most of last year, as did most of my peers.
Great. Well, we obviously had some questions sent through, but we also wanted to just give you a bit of an introduction, but we're very happy to take further questions, so please send anything through. And if we're not covering sort of the relevant information or the things that you want to hear about, again, please just let us know. So, but we're going to keep it pretty fluid and just hopefully give you a really good insight into King & Wood Mallesons, and in particular the projects area, which is a huge growth practice group for the firm, so we really wanted to highlight that. And I know it's not a practice group that most people are aware of, so we thought again that would be interesting for you, I guess, just to hear a little bit about that. But we might just start off briefly with King & Wood Mallesons. We have 27 international offices. We're one of the largest international legal networks in Asia, with over 500 partners and more than 2,000 lawyers. Our clients range from a mix of global and financial corporate powerhouses through to new industry makers and obviously government. We have a unique positioning in the sense of we are the only law firm able to practice Chinese, Hong Kong, Australian, English, US, and a significant range of European laws under one integrated legal brand. And I guess our tagline there is we are connecting Asia to the world and the world to Asia. So that's a little bit about the firm. Within the Australian partnership, we've got 5 key practice groups. Mergers and acquisitions, which again, for some of you may know as corporate. So it's not just mergers and acquisitions. We've got other groups that sit within that. We've got banking and finance, we've got projects and real estate, and within that group there's also environment. We've got tax, and we have dispute resolution. But you know, they're the 5 broad areas, but many subgroups within those 5 practice areas. In Australia, we've got offices Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Perth, and Brisbane. Did I get that right? Is that 5? There's 5. Yes, 5 groups, and it's, you know, a very integrated firm in the sense of a lot of the work is done across offices, across practice groups. So although you are based in an office, it's quite interesting. I think it's because of technology now, it's much more both cross-border and even cross-office work within Australia. So that's a little bit about the firm. I might pass over now to Aiko, and we'll talk a bit about projects, and then hopefully we'll have some time to cover some things around clerkships and questions that you may have. But I'll hand over now.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I'm a graduate in the projects team, and the project team does work in relation to infrastructure and energy, and right now I'm doing work related to energy. The projects team actually does a large variety of work that varies between corporate, regulatory, and financing. So they can advise clients anything from acquisition of wind farms and solar farms to financing the purchase of these and providing advice on the energy regulations as well. And one of the questions that we got from students that was pre-submitted was what I do on a daily basis. In terms of corporate work, I could help draft like due diligence reports or share sale agreements, or I could help draft finance documents or security documents, or I could look up energy regulation to see how clients are supposed to comply with them or if any rule changes are supposed to affect them. And energy is a really exciting sort of area to be in because there are a lot of rule changes in the area, a lot of regulatory change. It's also quite an interesting and complex field because there's a technical side to things. So I'm actually also learning a lot about how generation works, how they transport electricity to the grid. There's just such a variety of work, so I'm never bored, and it's rare for me to do the same task twice. So I'll bring it back to you.
Great. Thank you. I know what sort of one of the other questions that we received, I think, was you're obviously rotating in projects at the moment, but we just thought we might let you know about, I guess, the rotation system at King & Wood Mallesons, so you're clear of how that works. So when you clerk with us, depending on the office, you'll do 1 or 2 rotations, and that's really dependent on the length of the clerkship. In Sydney, we do 2. In Melbourne, Perth and Brisbane, you just do 1 rotation, and Canberra 2 as well, just because it's a slightly longer clerkship. So you get the opportunity at a clerk also to start seeing the business and thinking about the practice areas that might interest you. But that really comes more into play when you start as a graduate. And we currently do 3 6-month rotations. Our graduates obviously are able to put forward what they want to do, and always and where possible, we'll give everyone the rotations that they want. Some people are quite open, and some people are much more sort of planned with what they want to do. But those 3 6-month rotations will be across the 5 practice groups that we talked about before. And with each of those rotations, you get quite intense, what we would say, practice group induction, because obviously you may not have studied or be aware of that particular practice group from when you're at university. So we do have a kind of unassumed knowledge policy with our training, and we make sure that right at the beginning, in that first week, you really get trained up incredibly well for that particular rotation and that practice group. So we think about what skills you need to be a rotator in that group and really make it practical. So a lot of our training is also written by junior lawyers who have previously done rotations and can really, advise on what skills we can best provide our graduates. So as well as the firm-wide induction, you do have quite intensive, what we would call practice group induction. Okay, have you thought, obviously, first rotation, where next?
So because projects has exposed me such a variety of different areas, and I do a lot of financing work or corporate work. So I think for my next 2 rotations, I might give it a go in banking and finance or M&A. So I can sort of continue the experience of projects and sort of use the things I've learned there.
Oh, that's good. And obviously with those particular practice groups, you have got that then in possibility to work overseas. So when you're considering what practice groups you're interested in or the areas of law, if that is something you want to do, then, think carefully about that. So certainly with projects and banking and finance and mergers and acquisitions and also DR, you can work overseas. So we, in your 3rd rotation at King & Wood Mallesons, you can apply to go to a different office. Some people choose to go domestically, some people choose to go internationally. So we've got about 5 rotators in Hong Kong at the moment, 1 in Singapore, and we've got, I think we had 3 or 4 people from Australia go domestically. So there's always that possibility also to see another office in another jurisdiction, etc. And that's great with the rotations, but also building your skill set and the network across the business. I'm just trying to think what else might be interesting for you. I know we also, I think one of the questions we had was sort of numbers and how does that look. So they do differ each year, and we're not too prerequisite with our clerkship numbers, but I just thought I might give you a bit of a tell. We had 158 seasonal clerks last year. So that was 37 in Sydney, 4 in Canberra, 77 in Melbourne, which covers summer and winter, 18 in Brisbane, which again was summer and winter, and 22 in Perth, which is summer and winter. We've been as high as sort of 177 the previous year, so it really just depends in what's happening in the market and obviously our accepts and declines. How that correlates into graduate numbers is this year we have 83 graduates within the firm. So that's around 35 in Sydney, 5 in Canberra, 21 in Melbourne, 13 in Brisbane and 9 in Perth. I know a question that often comes up is are our graduate positions always filled through clerkships? That is actually a combination. So the majority of positions within the grad program do go to clerks, but certainly in the last 3 years in Sydney, we've done 2 graduate intakes, and we're always interested to receive resumes from graduates in the different centres, and they'll be able to let you know whether there are vacancies or not. But I know that's an interesting one, but we certainly have found that there's some incredibly great candidates at the graduate level and depending on workflow and things that might happen, say the Royal Commission and you need more staff, then you'll see that those graduate programs and intakes increase across the firms. Okay. I wanted to, I think the other question we talked a bit about was got asked about was the training. I might just give you a high level overview of, I guess, what the clerkship and graduate training looks like, and then I might pass over and you could perhaps give an example of projects just so we could talk about, we talked about that practice group in induction, but what it actually looked like. So we are very proud that we have a market-leading graduate education program. Our program constantly evolves and we spend a lot of time listening to our graduates, taking feedback and tweaking the program based on that. So it's got an emphasis on, I guess, legal excellence, technical expertise, commercial skills, knowledge management, legal project management, innovation, social and self-development and client focus. We try and incorporate a lot and not just keep it at the technical level. As many of you will have heard now that lawyers look quite differently to sort of 10 years ago and 15 years ago. So the skill set that we need to build our graduates has changed, and we need to really make sure that our training allows you to develop that. We also believe that people are individual and some people will want to do more training in some areas than others, and say more technical focus, or someone might more lean towards the legal project management. So we do again also try and have a flexible approach to that, where you can build on the skills that you want to do for your career too. So that's really the graduate education program, but they're both underpinned, as I said, when you come in as a clerk or as a graduate, we make sure you have a really comprehensive induction. We want you to go to the desk feeling confident, comfortable, ready for day one at whatever role you're doing. So there is quite an intensive induction, both sort of everything from I guess our software and the technology that you'll use, but also how to pick up the phone, where's the printer, who's got coffee, etc., etc. So lots and lots of support when you join a firm, because obviously that can be a fairly daunting thing for people. Do you want to talk about your particular experience in training?
Yeah, sure. So like Sam said, we've given a lot of training when we start as graduates. So I think for my group, we got a whole week of training, and it wasn't just about the technical things like how to draft documents, what to look out for in terms of like formatting and presentation. We also got a lot of training on sort of how to work as a team, how to transition to full-time work. I thought that was a really good balance between the technical side and like the non-technical side of things. In terms of training and projects, one example I can think of is that a partner and a senior associate actually came in to give us a case study, sort of a presentation of a deal they've previously worked on. It was very interactive, so it was very helpful and sort of like taught us how to think about in terms of what is needed for a deal and why lawyers do what they do. Other than that, I think we got overviews of what like basic knowledge of real estate. I think projects is a bit different because every area does such different work. But I know for banking and finance, you get a whole week of like boot camp knowledge. So yeah, I would say it really depends on the practice group. But in your smaller teams, my development coach, who we get assigned to, has been very helpful as well. And he's sort of explained to me how like the energy market works. And including the small stuff like where's the food or like the lollies. So, yeah,
that's good. It's a nice segue actually to support and what roles are within the firm that support you. So both as a clerk and as a graduate with the firm, you're given a buddy within your practice group, and that's really someone more at your peer level who can sort of show you around, tell you a little bit about the firm and how it operates, and just really settling in, particularly into your practice group and any niche, areas you need to know or information you need to know. We also provide you with a development coach. The development coach is really there to help you set your objectives for the particular rotation and to give you sort of guidance around the work that you might be doing. So they may not always give you the work, and it's usually a senior associate level, but they're really there to sit with you at that first 6 months and say, look, to get the best out of this rotation, we'd suggest you focus on the following, but you'll also have some personal objectives that you want to achieve. So your development coach is there to give you regular feedback, meet with you regularly, and make sure that you're achieving the objectives that you set. Then obviously also have a supervising partner. So supervising partner will work closely with the development coach, but we try and have sort of distinct roles so that we make sure all your needs from a support perspective are covered. You also have a grad team, which is my team from Human Resources, where we again meet with you regularly and support you. So lots of networks, and I think one of the best networks that you have when you go into a firm is also your peers, so your clerkship cohort or your graduate cohort. And it's interesting, even at partnership level, you can still see the partners who talked about their clerkship cohort, and they still sort of share stories about that. So when you come through, you certainly do really go through with that group, and they continue, and obviously not everybody stays within the firm, but you continue those relationships, whether that person goes to a client or a different organisation. So that's a great support network, I think, and a really strong one. The other support areas I can think of, or not really support, but groups, we have a lot of sporting activities. There's a team for everything at Kingwood Mallesons, and we may not be excellent at it all, but we certainly have fun. So from running clubs to touch footy to netball, to cricket, to just walking, to doing group exercise classes. I think there's some yoga and Pilates and different things. So it's really nice at the firm. You also get to meet people outside of your practice group and at different levels and within shared services or legal that, again, give you that sort of support network. And we also have quite a few formal groups as well that will be looking after staff. Okay. Where do we go next?
We could take a look at some of the questions.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay.
Yeah.
What makes KWM stand out from the other firms? It's a really interesting one, and we both should answer that because I think it's always an individual thing. I could read off the website for you and tell you that we are the only Asia-based law firm, etc., but I think what stands out is usually a really personal thing, and it's how you feel. I've actually been with the firm 18 years now, so my first clerks are all partners now. So, but for me, it's the actual personality of the firm that makes it so special and it makes it stand out. The partners work incredibly well. It's a very, despite being a kind of very successful and one of the top law firms in Australia, it's also very down to earth, and I think that is lovely. You can approach anybody, talk to anybody. There's a lot of banter, but there's also a huge amount of diversity, so you don't have to be a certain type of person or a certain way to be here. So for me, it's the reason I'm still here after 18 years is really that sort of, for me, it's the personality of the firm and the kindness of people and the fun we have really on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. For me, I guess KWM, really stood out during the clerkship process. So I think it's really important to go to as many events as you can, so then you can try and talk to people from the firm, whether it's HR or lawyers. And for me, just during our clerkship events, I got to meet a number of senior associates, solicitors, partners, and I just felt like everyone from KWM was very relatable. I could have conversations with them. They were all very different individuals, very ambitious, smart, but genuinely nice people. And for me, the vibe was perfect, and that's why I loved them.
Yeah. Okay, did you always know you wanted to study law and go into commercial law, or was that a bit of a journey through uni that sort of got you here? I'm always interested.
Not really for me. Actually, for my other degree, I did commerce, so it seemed like a natural fit.
Yeah.
I do know a lot of my peers who have taken arts degrees or science degrees that may not necessarily correspond to commercial law. But I think after they've tried out the clerkship process, gone out to a couple events, they can see how it's just really good training. So I think they were actually, this is something I want to try out, and opens up a lot of pathways as well. So it's just a really good starting point after a degree in law.
Yeah. No, that's great. One of the other questions we've had is, what does an ideal CV and cover letter look like? I'm going to completely ruin this because we don't, in Sydney we don't have either. In Melbourne we do have CV and cover letter, and we tend to differ in the States as to what information we ask, but we have some standard information that each centre always asks for, and I'll perhaps just start with that with regards to what looks good. And I think my main piece of advice is take your time with the applications. I know that they are different by each law firm, and obviously, although you have the 4 weeks, it's an incredibly busy time, but I would take a really planned approach to the applications. I would work out which firms you want to apply for, write a list for each of those firms on what the application form entails, so that you know, well, that one's a particularly lengthy one and it'll take me this long and they need this information for that one, or this one's a bit more simpler, or I can cut and paste and share the information across the board. So have a think about who you want to apply for, then have a look at what the requirements for the application are. And then just remember that it is, whether it's a CV or a cover letter or questions that the firm has asked you, it is our first opportunity to see your communication skills. So your writing has to be great. Keep it plain English, keep it simple, try not to sort of go off track. I know sometimes people really want to put a certain piece of information into something and it may not fit under that, but you really want to tell the firm about that. But I'd really stick to the questions, stick to what you've been asked for, and just keep it as succinct as possible. The other piece is, and obviously it depends on the firm, but firms get up to 800, 1,000 applications. So certainly at King & Mallesons, we review every application, and most applications have 2 reads. So it's important that when we're reading an application, whether it's CV, cover letter, or, as I said, questions, that it's easy to read. So another sort of piece of advice would be to get a friend who's not part of this process to read your application. If it makes sense to them and it's clear and it's easy to read, then that's highly likely going to be the same for the reviewer, who might be looking at 50 in that particular time. So I think that is the best thing. So specifically CV and cover letter, I would say make sure you don't duplicate the information. They don't want to read sort of, your cover letter should not then just say exactly what's in your CV. So keep the cover letter short, again, different information, a couple of paragraphs max, I would think, unless there's something else you want to say. But cover letter is really for setting the scene and providing any information that you can't put in the CV. So have a think about that, but don't just kind of repeat everything that the reviewer is going to see in your CV. Is there anything, other tips, okay, you'd say around sort of when you were going through the process and applying to the different firms?
Right. I guess for me, there's always part of the application that asks why you want to come to their firm. And again, that's why I think it's so important to go to as many like events that law firms hold, because it's really hard to just give an interesting answer when you read the website. So if you meet more lawyers or like HR people from the firms, then you can kind of sort of give better reasons as to why you're drawn to the firm. For me, that was like the biggest distinguishing factor.
It is. And I think the other piece with the application forms that you'll see, and I know certainly with our process, it changes each year. So don't rely on information of what the form looked like last year, because we used to use psychometric testing. We don't anymore. We're doing video interviewing this year, which we haven't done before. So make sure that you take the time and keep abreast of any changes. Just because someone sort of from the year above says, oh, by the way, that one just does that, it's pretty easy. Just double check, because as law firms, we're in a habit of changing things and trying to keep up with technology and always doing the best recruitment process we can. So that does mean that it keeps evolving. But sort of one of the things we've done this year to try and simplify KWM's form is to break it down into sections and give you a timeline for each section, outline ahead what we're going to ask you in that particular section, and we're hoping that will really ease you into the application form and make sure you can be as planned as possible. We are, as I said, aware that you're particularly busy during this period. So, we do try as much as possible to make it simple for you, to move through the form, to have the information, and then again for our reviewers to read that so that you get your application reviewed in the best way. So we try and think about it from both those ways, which I think is what you need with an application. That probably leads on to then, I guess, the interview process, which we get a few questions about. Again, depending on the centre, because of whether it's a multiple clerkship or one clerkship, We have different interviews, but we always have a recruitment committee in each centre. That recruitment committee is made up of solicitors and partners, and they're heavily involved in the interviews and the review process. So we want to make sure that the people who are interviewing you have been involved in your application form. They know what we've been doing, and they often have been out on campus, so they're really well versed into what's going on at university and the different things. So you will have an interview with usually a partner and a solicitor. Sometimes HR will be involved in those, sometimes they won't, but there's a sort of a first interview. And then if it is a centre that does a second interview, we really then try to make sure that you get a feel for the firm. So you'll spend some time going down onto the practice group floors, actually sitting with junior lawyers to see what it's really like, and being able to ask questions up front, etc. We might take you along to a lunch, different things. We just try and make it as transparent as possible so that at the end of the interviews you really can make an informed decision. For me, it's very important that the people that come here want to come here, and they're very clear about what the future looks like, and what their career will look like. So we do spend a lot of time up front trying to make sure that you've got all the information, you've met tons of people, and that you can make that, feeling with whether it's you want to go to this firm or a different firm, you make that with a really informed sort of mind. I think that answers that. Sorry, that was the sort of process like that. But sorry, aside from the interview, we also run a number of events, again, just trying to make sure you meet people. So we'll have things like mini careers fairs, but for the practice groups, and again, always trying to make them as informal as possible so that you feel comfortable. There's nothing worse than just coming into a room with 100 people and name badges. So we find things like having it formatted like a careers fair, but for practice groups means that you can kind of walk up and talk to people. They're from banking and finance, and it's a bit easier to start that conversation. So we also do things like Inside a Deal, where we actually take you inside a deal, and what did the graduate do in that particular deal, because as lovely as it is hearing about a partner, you're not going to be doing the partner's work, you're going to be doing the graduate. So again, we want to make sure that you have a really good feel for what work you'll be doing on a daily basis. So lots of events, lots of meeting people. Death by canapé, I think is what they normally say. But it's a good process. It's intense, but I think all the firms try really hard, as I say, to make sure it's as easy as possible for you, and it's not stressful. Okay, sorry, we're reading the questions as they come through, and of course I haven't got my glasses on, so that doesn't help.
I can read them.
Yeah.
I think one of our questions, what kind of skill sets are you looking for? Should I take this one?
Yeah, and I'll see.
I feel like good communication skills, good people skills. Because at the end of the day, you just want someone you can really relate to, have good conversation with while you're at work. Other than that,
I think it's a very difficult thing to articulate, but we're looking for people that are going to enjoy the type of work we do, and that feeds back to that transparency people. So when we have a review of an application, we don't have a GPA cutoff, we don't look for somebody who's necessarily got legal work experience. We love hospitality, we love anything retail, things like that. So we don't have a prerequisite list of skills that we look for. It probably would make our life a bit easier if we did, but we really don't believe in that. So we read each application, as I say, individually, and it's really about you, how you've communicated about yourself, and whether we've connected with that application and we feel like you've answered the questions, you've articulated why you might want to work at King & Maursons or another commercial law firm, and that's really that piece. So that's the initial part of what you're looking for. But as I mentioned, it's really about your communication skills. Do you like working in a team? Will you like the type of work we do? Do you have sort of that cross-cultural awareness? Are you interested in the Asia piece, or you might be more focused on Australia? So again, we just get to learn that, learn about you through the process, but we try not to be too prerequisite. If you look at banking, it's I think 65. And it differs each year, but between 65 and 70% of people have done arts degrees. So we're not looking for commerce law or this or that. You'll develop as you come into the firm, and therefore we try not to be too prescriptive, as I said, about what we look for, because everyone changes. And we don't know what opportunities you're going to want to seek. So we just try and make sure that we're as open as possible, and we've got the best training, you get the best access to the best work, and you'll then develop and you'll decide whether you sort of want to carry on in the commercial law path with us, or you might want to go in-house, you might want to go to the bar. There's just so many incredible career opportunities. We're also seeing more and more lawyers stay within the firm but in different roles, so going into innovation, going into strategy. So there's a big, there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for lawyers. This is a good one, actually, from a HR perspective. Who is the best person to address the cover letter to? It's a killer, that one. I would personally, I think usually when you go onto a firm's website, in that particular centre, there's usually a HR contact. I would address it to them because it's easier that way, and you hopefully won't get it too wrong, because, as I said, there are recruitment partners, and there are key recruitment partners that chair the committee for that particular centre. But again, too hard to know, and we wouldn't expect you to know that information. So I would just do it to HR, or it's easy. You can even do it to the firm. I don't think people too hung up on that one.
Any?
Oh, here we go. Is there an application that you remember stood out to you, and why did it stand out? I always find, actually, it changes by year, because it's quite interesting with the application forms. You get a bit of a feel for what society is doing. I remember when, it shows my age, when MasterChef started, nearly every application mentioned MasterChef, and it was just quite funny. We were like, what's happened? And then, you see different things that are going on, but for me, there aren't any particular ones. It's the ones that are easy to read and that I don't have to reread. So that is just the biggest piece of advice I could give you. If I can read your application in one go, it makes sense to me, and I can just pile, then that's great. If I have to go back and read a paragraph because it's a bit all over the shop, or you haven't used plain English, or you're trying to sort of go off on a tangent, that makes it really hard. So that the ones that stand out are the ones that you read quickly and you just go, it's a no-brainer, it just goes into the yes pile. So I think that would be the best advice. But there's been some very funny ones and some interesting things that people do in their spare time and different things. So it's great, but the whole bit is about diversity. So you're not looking for one particular. But yeah, easy to read is the key there.
The next one is whether they have to be penultimate year students. Can they be final year students? We do.
I would check. This is an interesting one because there's, as I said, the firms definitely change, and each firm may have a slightly different. We're all, the majority of us are signed up to the guidelines, but they are just guidelines. So firms will, I guess, put their own layers in. We're happy to have applications from graduates. The only thing we state is just so that you know that there would be a year's gap before you can start as a graduate, because obviously the clerkship finishes, and it's happened, but it's rare that you'd finish the clerkship on the Friday and start as a graduate on the Monday. So as long as you are open to having the sort of 12-month break, which is when most of the graduate roles will be for that particular clerkship cohort, then absolutely fine. The one thing I would do probably as well is just make sure that you say, why you didn't apply for clerkships previously, if there's a reason. Just because, again, then the reviewer knows it's not a question they've got to ask. So just think about, okay, I'm a graduate. I didn't apply last year because I was overseas. I wasn't interested. It doesn't matter. It's really just being sort of clear and honest. But we certainly do accept applications from graduates. And also, if you're in your third year and you're going to be away for your fourth year, so if you're doing a double degree, again, we're happy to accept that then if you're definitely not going to be there. So we try and keep the clerkship to penultimate year students, because then we're really keen for you to come back and work in the firm in your final year, so that when you start as a graduate, you're really bedded into the firm and feel comfortable and experienced. But so that's why it's aimed at penultimate, but it doesn't have to be that. That's just, I guess, historical and works well from a headcount and resource flowing perspective. Sorry, I'm just checking out, how should I go about addressing Yeah, so sorry, I think I've answered that. So hopefully I would just put it in. We, for example, we have a question that just says if there's any information that you'd like us to know. So I'd whack it in there. If you're doing a CV and cover letter for a different firm, you could pop it in the cover letter. But hopefully most firms will, excuse me, give you an opportunity to put that in. But certainly at ours, you'll see there's a question if you want to add any other information. You don't have to. So that's good. Okay.
So, but another question that I get asked a lot, I was thinking, was students seem to be worried about picking a practice area that they're interested in their applications. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it doesn't matter what you say really, because you can completely change your mind once you start here. That was just another question that I got a lot.
No, you're right. And again, we put, we've got a section where if you're interested in a particular practice group, you can put it there, but the I don't know yet is absolutely fine. The only reason we put it in there is if you're going through the interview process and you get to say the second interview, we might tailor you up with someone that you're interested in, but again, we'll always check that with you at that time. So it's just interesting for us to see if there's any sort of trends coming through. But I think our other stat is about 75% of people when they start their rotation sort of have that one group in mind that they're going to settle in, and 75% of those people don't end up in that group. So I think it is keep an open mind, see what's happening in the market, see how you feel when you're in the firm. But yes, we don't look or put people in or out for particular practice groups. So we actually debated this year whether we needed the question, but it is quite interesting just to see sort of what's going on, because you do see some trends, but it's not an important thing if you want to put I don't know yet. There's an interesting one at the end here as well. If I have an internship at a big accounting firm over the summer, but wish to do a clerkship at a law firm in the winter, should I make reference to it? I certainly would, but we are very, King of Malisons is very transparent. As I said, we would like honesty from you, and we're very transparent from our side. So I think it's fantastic. You know, you're obviously interested in two different types of organisations. You get to see both, and then you'll make the informed decision. You'll also get great experience and great skills from that accounting firm. So for me, it would be a positive, but I can only talk, on perspective of King of Malisons on that one. But I would hope, most people would think it's, most firms would see it as a positive, not a negative.
Okay. Someone's just submitted a question saying that, building on one of my comments about the practice areas, does it disadvantage students if they're interested in a very niche area? What would you say?
No. Look, we try to advise people not to do, say, 3 rotations in niche areas, partly for your skill building, and things like going through an M&A is, even if you don't want to, just your contract and your drafting and the skills that you gain from going through one of those. But absolutely not. The firm is made up of lots of, it's got the big 5 practice groups, but then there are lots of niche groups within that. So I think it's just about making sure that when you finish your 3 rotations, you can make an informed decision. You feel like you've seen enough of the firm, you've seen your skill set, what you might want to do in the future. The other thing we're looking at is being able to do rotations also as you go through your career, because sometimes at the end of the 3 rotations, you decide on a group, but that market might change, you might change. So there's also lots of possibilities for people to then move groups at a later stage, move offices, move careers. So the flexibility is much greater than it was, a few years ago. So I think you just need to be upfront about what you want to do and why you want to do it. And as long as you can articulate the reasons, we're really interested.
Yeah, I think we just have one more here asking, what will the application process be for this year? Is there going to be a cocktail function? What are some tips to stand out on that one?
That's a good one. We'll talk about Sydney, but if it's not Sydney, please let me know and we can talk. But it's just, they're all fairly standard, so it's just easier if I pick one centre to talk about. But the application form, as I said, has got 4 components. There's just one bit which is some very short, sharp personal information. We then ask you to answer a couple of questions. You will then do a task which replicates the work that our graduates do, and then finally do, again, a very short video interview. So not all our centres will do the video interviewing as part of the first application process, but it will be built in. So again, just have a look at, if you're interested in a particular office, just make sure you have a look at the process. But certainly in Sydney, you'll do the video interviewing as part of the application. In Melbourne, you'll do that at a later stage, but you will be doing it. Brisbane's already gone, so theirs will be sort of different for next year. And I think Perth and Canberra won't be doing the video interviewing, but do the task and the questions. So you'll find most of it's similar, but you just might do it at different stages depending on the centre. So you've got your application process, and then if you go through to that, you get invited to interview. We try and have an event before the interviews start, which is the one I mentioned previously about the careers fair, and that's or just a more informal evening. So that allows you to come into the firm before you actually come in for interview. You know where the lift is, you know where level 61 is. It's just nice, and you get to meet a lot of people, and hopefully in a relaxed environment you get to know a bit more about the firm, which might help you then when you come in to interview and do your questions. So then you'll have your first interview, and then if you go through to the second round, certainly in Sydney there would be another event, but that's inside a deal, and then the second interview. But with the cocktail events, or what we call the funny KWM Careers Fair night, I think the way to stand out is just to be open, try and talk to as many people as possible, be polite, be aware that you're in a group situation. Also, I find it really interesting. We recruit from a range of universities, and we try very hard to do that. Up to, I think in Sydney there's 13 different unis in last year's clerkship cohort. So, but that means sometimes people come and arrive in a group, and they know people and they've got some friends, but often they come into that on their own. So if you see someone standing on their own, you know, do introduce yourself. Again, you're starting to meet your cohort and those people, and it's really nice. So, and I think, again, just have a think about the questions you're asking. If you are in a group situation, try and ask a question that might be interesting for everyone rather than totally personally for you. If you have got a really personal question, you might just want to say, I have got something that's around me, but, you know, can I grab you for 2 minutes afterwards? Because often what will happen is the partner or lawyer you'll be standing in a group and chatting. But I think that the main bit is just to enjoy yourself, be yourself, and yeah, just be conscious of the environment that you're in and the groups, and making sure that you're not perhaps taking over the whole conversation, or you're not saying anything at all, or different things. But, you know, some of us are more social than others, and we're very aware of that. But I think it's more just sort of common manners and decency around making sure that everyone in the group looks okay and is happy.
Yeah, I think the really helpful thing about that careers fair event was that not only did you have stands for each practice group, I think the pro bono and business development groups also had stands.
Yeah.
So it really helped.
Yeah, we've now got diversity, we've got training and development. So we keep building on that, because they are good actually, and as the firm changes. So that's good. Okay.
Is 3 pages for resume too long? Do I need a reference on their resume?
I don't. Oh, again, it will depend on the firm. So I think most people say a resume should be 2 pages, but I think if you've got applicable information, it could go to 3. I certainly wouldn't do more than 3. References, again, they'll ask if you want those, and we would certainly never take references without asking you first. So we don't ask for references at that stage in the application form. We do sort of reference checking later. So again, apologies, that really will be sort of specific to the particular firm on what they do. There's an interesting question here around applying for 2 centres. It's fine. We get lots of people applying for multiple centres, even Hong Kong and Melbourne, Hong Kong and Sydney, or Brisbane and Sydney, and often Sydney and Canberra. Because the application forms are different, we do actually ask you, though, to apply for each centre. But with our application form, that the information can pre-populate, so hopefully it's not a burden on you. But it just means that because we have different committees and the timing is different in each of the centres, things like reviewing has to happen at different times, so therefore we need to make sure that your application is going to not be missed and be put into one group and not another. But no, I'd apply for as many centres. And again, we've had people, sometimes people say, I didn't go through in the clerkship, but I want to try again in graduate. And we've had people who are successful their second time around. So I'd be fairly fluid on that one, and just have a go. But I think the main things are just check with the firm. What you don't want to do is fill out an application form unnecessary because you're not eligible, or that particular firm doesn't accept applications from different things. So you just never know. So it's just such a big process for you and so time consuming. The one thing I do is just make sure before I apply, I check what the, not rules and regulations, but what the prerequisites are for that particular firm or office. But certainly at KWM, we're very happy. And when we've had people in the past interviewing at the same time with two centres, and then we just kind of get together at the end and talk about, which is their centre of preference and do that. But we're one firm, so it's great. Oh, the old grade, GPA cut-off grades. I would certainly say, having been here 18 years and within the law firm, grades are far less important than they were. There's definitely a correlation now where people see that grades don't correlate with success. It's your ability and your communication skills and your passion for what you're doing and your approach and things like that. So look, we do look at your grades, but as I said, we don't have a GPA cutoff, and we haven't for, I don't know, probably 15, 16 years. We'll, as I said, we'll certainly look, and if we've got any particular questions on your academic transcript, we'll ask you. But I think, you should be open, and most of the firms, I think, don't have, well, I don't know, actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that. I think most of the firms don't have a GPA cutoff, but again, if they do, try and find that out, because if you're not going to make it, you don't want to bother filling out the application form. But, I think as long as sometimes you see, often with I guess, law transcripts, they can start a bit bumpy in the first year. It can take a while to get on track. So again, as long as your grades have gone sort of trajectory upwards, not downwards, then we're fairly relaxed. And we also we're very aware that the generations change as well. People are working full time. They might be doing two jobs. So not everyone is just there studying and just studying. So that obviously impacts on grades. So again, and that's where in that particular for our application form, where you've got that question, is there any other information you need to know? If you've got a fail, or if your grades are low and there's a particular reason, just put it in, because then the reviewer can connect with it and go, well, that's okay, that happened and that's understandable. So I just make sure, if you're worried about your grades, try and be upfront about it and just say about them, and then you can find out. And if you're particularly worried about whether a firm does have a GPA cutoff, I would just check first. Call HR or send an email and find out, and then you won't waste your time.
We don't have any more questions for now.
I feel like I've talked.
Oh dear. You want to mention the international students?
Yes, yep. What we talked about as well before is I think I said that the firms change quite regularly, both from our application process and who we do, who we can accept. So for this year, KWM is accepting applications from international students in Sydney and Melbourne. So that's, that's great. So again, we've tried to put as much information on the application form to check that does fit for you. But if you've got any questions, let us know. But that's been a really positive change for us. So we've been wanting to take international students for a couple of years. So we're really excited. Really looking forward to reading all the different applications this year. And but yeah, if you've got any questions about that, do look on the. We've put sort of quite a bit of information just to make it as simple for you as possible. But the one thing I'd say, we've had a few questions that from people who are international students but not actually doing law degrees in Australia. So the one prerequisite we have is you need to be enrolled in a law degree in Australia. But you can be on a visa, you can be an international student, but that's the bit. You do actually have to be enrolled in a degree and be eligible to start as a graduate or available on each application form will have when the graduate positions are available. So those are those.
Yeah, I think that's all our questions for now.
I'm just having a look at my notes. The only other thing, it's a bit of a plug, but I know that often people really don't have an insight into commercial law, especially before the clerkships, if you haven't had the opportunity to have legal work experience. We have got a virtual experience program, which sits with Inside Sherpa. We've got about over 5,500 students enrolled at the moment. We've got 2 programs. We've got one called Intro to Law, which is a shorter, sharper kind of introduction, a bit more basic level. You really could do it from first year law any year, but you know, it's simple enough that you don't have to have done lots of law subjects, and that really is, as it says, it's introduction to commercial law. And that just takes a couple of hours. But then if you do that program and then you want to go on to something slightly more advanced, we've got the commercial law program, which probably is about 5 to 6 hours in total, but you can take a year to do it. You can take it a week. You can do it whenever you want. We're not assessing you. We're not looking at how you performed or how quickly you've done it. That they really are just programs to give you an insight to what it's like to work here. So we took real life tasks from graduates and put them onto this virtual experience program. And you'll get instructions, you'll be told what to do, you'll get answers at the end that just sort of says there's no right or wrong, but this is sort of best practice response, or this is what you should have been aiming for. And as I said, we don't assess it. It's a completely safe place for you. It's just a chance to gain experience, gain an insight, learn a bit about the practice groups, the different language people use. We've got a million acronyms for everything, and you sort of find that out as you go through the virtual experience program. But I would recommend, and we're not the, as much as I'd love to say, we're not the only law firm with one. So you can do the King of Malison's one, but I think Trellison have one too. I think KPMG, depending on your interest. But it's the feedback we get from the people that have undertaken the program is phenomenal. So I think it really helps you build confidence, skills, and just gives you that little extra insight if you haven't had the opportunity to be go into a firm before. So I'd certainly consider that as well.
We've just got a couple more questions.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for the video interview? That's a good one, actually, because we've only just started using it. So it's been quite fun for us. Check what's in the background. Your bedroom doesn't have to be immaculate, but just make sure, do have a look at what's in the background. Make sure you know the timing. For most people, we've tried to keep it really simple. But again, often people's answers it does just cut off. So just have a think and make sure if there's something you want to say, you say it up front. But they're really relaxed. You'll see me, unfortunately, again. But I'll just ask you 2 questions. In fact, I think I'm wearing the same jumper in it. So you really will think you've seen me. But no, it's very, very straightforward, very simple. Again, it just gives us another way to view you. So we try and we try to see your writing skills, we try to see you communicating, we try and see your grades, your experience, just different things. So the more information we can have, the better decision we make, and it means we don't have to do things like GPA cutoffs or look for certain things. So please don't be nervous about the task that you do. The feedback, again, from all the people that did it in Brisbane last year, Brisbane this year and Canberra last year, was phenomenal. And we also used it for the Sydney and Melbourne graduate programs, and everyone enjoyed it. So it was a good task that they, really gained an insight much better than, say, psychometrics, which, I know certain people don't like. So, yes, I think I'm going to try then. And the other one, sorry, is behavioural. Is it behavioural question? Each firm will differ. So we don't, but some firms will. So again, I check. Hopefully, most firms I think are really good. They give you information up front before you go into the interview. So just check. Ours are always based on your application form, and so therefore will be completely different for each individual. So ours aren't behavioural, but I think some firms do. So just double check. What kind of jobs kind of fresh you can get without any previous experience? Oh, that's a good one. Law clerking tends to be, and again, I can probably only really talk about here, but most times it's usually only in your 3rd year and onwards. Sometimes we take 2nd year law students, but usually we like you to have done a couple of subjects before you come into the firm. But we don't look for people with experience with, for certain groups and roles. It really depends on the job. But certainly if you take things like the Royal Commission previously, that there were just lots of simple tasks. So we had lots of law law clerks in, and you didn't need a specific experience for that. But sometimes a particular practice group might want someone who's worked in that area before, or has worked in a firm before, or got some sort of office experience. But it really depends on the role. So I just have a look on the different positions. Is there a way for us to practice for COAS AI testing? There isn't actually, and honestly, it's so, when you go on, you'll get a video and some information, but it's really, you'll just be given a task and you'll undertake it. But it's, I know it sounds silly, but it is quite fun, and you don't, there's nothing to practice, no need to practice. And you'll get really good, clear instructions, and you get so much time to do it. On average, I think in the past, people have taken between 30 and 45 minutes to do the task. Usually we're probably around 45 minutes, and we give you 2 hours. So we don't want to put you under any pressure at all. So you have plenty of time to get the question and then have a look. Will technical questions be asked during the video interview? No. Oh, no. I'm looking at my colleague Emma. No. I was trying to think, well, we've done so many different video interviews and different ones, and which ones we selected, but no technical questions.
If they're not successful in this year's clerkship application, can they apply for the grad program next year?
If there is a grad program, definitely. We don't always have a grad program. It really depends on workflow and what's happened with the clerkship. But you can certainly, as I mentioned before, you apply for a clerkship when you've graduated. So as long as you're happy to have that 12-month break, that's fine. So we don't have a planned grad program each year. As I said, I think we've had 2 or 3 over the last 3 or 4 years. But we had one earlier this year, but I'm not sure about next year, I'm afraid.
I think that's all our questions for now.
I think we've only got about 3 minutes. So thank you so much for listening to us. Apologies if I've gabbled on, but please, do take the time to have a look at the application form. As I said, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. We'd love to hear from you. KWM is an amazing firm. It's a great place to start your career. And we know that each person's career is different, so we spend a lot of time also making sure that you as individuals really reach your potential. But I think it's a great place, and I think it's an exciting time. And I know the clerkships are stressful, and if you're not doing clerkships, good luck. I think it's great to be listening and hearing about things before you start that process. But if you've got any questions, let us know. Applications close, I think, on the 14th of July. But to take your time on them and let us know. But hopefully we will get to see some of you in person during the interviews. And good luck with everything.
Good luck.